Jordan, just questions you have about your unit. I mean, I'm sure you don't know everything about this group, so what do you think, and what do you want to see through the next few weeks?
I think the big thing for us is quality depth. That's what we've got to develop. We've got a lot of guys with a lot of production off last year's unit that'll be back, and we're trying to fine tune some of those guys, trying to cross train some of those guys, which helps with that process. But our younger guy, we got to have a couple of guys that their development comes on. Just a couple to point out. Jordan Jefferson's one, Sean Martin's one, James Thomas. Guys like that are guys we've got to get into the roles that can, where they can help us on a weekly basis.
Curious your thoughts with moving Akeem down. You've got two really athletic guys inside. Does it change what you do as opposed to having Darius last year, or is it just a matter of getting your best 11 out there on your defense?
It's a little bit of both. Honestly, it's I've said this since we got here, is that explosion and power mean more to me than straight up size, and those are two that can do that at a high level, and it's good for them to be able to play both positions and cross train them, because it makes them very versatile for whenever their next move is, right? So no, that's and then there's certain things we can do and kind of expand what we've been doing with those guys in there, but short answer, combination of both.
And a guy like Darius, who could occupy blocks or maybe bull rush, Akeem has a little bit different skill set, right? He does.
Probably a step faster, not as powerful. Strength I think is pretty comparable, but they're a lot of the same similarities, but some things are different.
And where do you see Dante as far as physical shape? And looks to me like he's in really good shape.
He is. I think he's been in really good shape since the end of the 19th season. That's when he started really kind of changing his body and doing a couple things, different and with his diet and the nutrition side. And so, long term, you can see that it's paying off.
Transfers on your side of the ball that you took. I mean, why do you think you needed transfers? And when you haven't seen them in practice a whole lot yet, but when you saw them on film, what are their skills?
More than anything, the guys that we brought in here. Number one, I think that's a part of college football now. I think there's a section of that you always going to have to go into. There's no greater. A lot of times, no greater attribute than experience, and sometimes it don't matter the level. When you watch some of the guys, I'll take the guys from the FCS level. They had a skill set that we needed, but a lot of what we've evaluated with them is doing our research is, number one, how they play the game, and number two, the type of young men they are. So that's always into that evaluation, and those guys are going to be really good for us. Caleb Coleman, a junior college transfer, was a guy that really, with the COVID situation, was a multi-year eligibility guy that had junior college experience. So in our eyes, having that year, he's had college experience that really has the same eligibility as a high school kid almost. So that's a lot like a high school kid. We just got Darrell Middleton, who from Tennessee, who is, you see him, he stands out. So and has a good skill set. Got to get in shape, but so it's a little bit of a combination of need versus, the type guys that we bring in, and that just comes from doing your research on every particular kid, not necessarily where they come from.
Do you need each one of those to contribute this year? I mean, maybe start, maybe not, but at least be factors.
Yeah, I think they need to contribute. You'd like them to. Do we need them to be guys right out of the gate? Probably not. But we, just like Jared was saying, there's always going to be. It's just a season, and now you're going to play at least 3 or 4 more games. Just on the schedule, at least 3 on the schedule. You're not going to play, so you're going to have, however 210 more reps per guy in the 21 season. So you're going to have that, whether it's little knick-knack injuries to the season. So you just try to get their development caught up where they need to be. Some guys are going to be ahead of others, and so. But yes, we need them to. We wouldn't have them. I don't think anybody has them here unless they need to contribute in some way.
You mentioned Jefferson, and he played a good bit as a freshman. I think at one point late that year or early in his next year, you said maybe that was a little unfair to him because he wasn't ready and you kind of had to put him out there. Did last year give him a chance to kind of recover from that, get back to the fundamentals, the basics you wanted to teach him, and where is he on a more normal progression now?
19 was a little unfair to him, but I'll say this, going into 20, 20 was unfair to a lot of guys going into their second year, because that development is so key to either a redshirt freshman or a true sophomore, a second year guy. Now, a lot of the things last year that I had to really do for Darius, a lot of times didn't fit Jordan's skill set, which is fine. You just had to move him around. We knew we were going to be, at the time, a little unproven in the secondary, so we had to be creative with what we did up front, which a lot of that also wasn't, right in, what Jordan's good, what Jordan is dynamic at. Not that he's not good at it, it's just not dynamic at it, like you would think of what Darius could do. So some of that was really honestly on me, of how the design, some of the things I had to do. But this year again, a little bit different. People start to attack you different, and you need a different skill set in different situations. So now I think that his role will increase. He's had a great offseason. I don't know if he is the strongest guy, but if he's not, he's one of the top 3. And it's ridiculous how strong the kid is. So he's needed, yes.
Thoughts on Scotty Young as your position? We talked to some of the guys. They said he really is a dedicated, committed guy. Works out hard. Has he kind of stabilized that position, maybe from what the outsiders perceive with Tyke moving on?
Well, he obviously has a leg up just off the repetition that he has above the guys behind him. But Scotty does. Scotty works extremely hard. Scotty loves football, and that's one thing that we since he got here had to sit out. That all the practices, walkthroughs, whatever, he loves ball. And I think that's really, really starting to show. And so, yeah, he definitely has a leg up, yep.
And one other name that keeps popping up a little bit is Linnell Carr. Is he a guy that you want to anxious to see when you get the pads on where he's at?
Oh, yeah, I think Linnell is you talk about a lot of guys on defense in every defense at every school. Some guys are naturally gifted, and some guys they develop into great players, whatever it may be. I say this about Linnell. Linnell is one of our most naturally gifted pass rushers. Just sometimes has a knack for it. A lot of guys do. We're playing Linnell more as a stand-up, a little more at bandit than we did. Situationally, when we get into some package stuff, we'll use him a little different. But that's what he is. That's what he's good at. So we're trying finding ways to use him. Again, he's one of those guys that 2020 is, it's kind of. I kind of view him as hey, we're still like year 1.5. But I'm really excited about what the next 3 weeks hold for Linnell.
He's not super tall either. Does that help him maybe just kind of hide a little bit in the gaps or not?
Yes and no. Yeah, we move him around, blitzing him, rushing him. Linnell uses his leverage really well, but for that size, he's got some athleticism. So he, like I said, he has a knack to kind of not get himself in a situation where that hurts him.
Hey Jordan, going back to Deshawn, He's got prolific stats for middle linebacker when it comes to like sacks and TFLs. And I think Neil mentioned yesterday the blitzing aspect from the middle could be good. Without giving away the game, I understand that, but what type of a different player is he, and what can you do with him now that he's in the fold?
Yeah, so Deshawn, you got Deshawn Stevens?
Yeah.
So he is, again, a guy, his stats kind of speak for themselves, but he is more of a, what we call a box backer, or a B gap to B gap guy. But he does a nice job in these two practices. He has a knack to blitz, whether it's inside or outside. And I think when we were doing our research on the type of guy he was, obviously he's a fit into our defense, fit into the locker room. But he's another one of those guys. He has a knack to do it from a bunch of different positions. And when you watch what we do defensively, that's obviously a benefit.
Some bandit potential for you? Maybe not like just by the position.
Not as position.
Right.
Right. But you could,
Traits.
move him around different fronts.
And then you talked about having to add depth. I would imagine that the secondary, especially the back end, the safety spots, is that where you're looking for? I know it's very early, but you almost have to have quick looks at Burks, McLeod. You mentioned Coleman. You know already about Mallinger, but those guys, do they get extra attention just because of necessity now, maybe more so than a typical freshman, even if they did arrive in June?
Yeah, they do. And they're doing a nice job. I think, getting here early helped them. Talking about those split squad practices, for us, that's really the huge benefit of it. That you can get a lot of quality reps with some younger guys. And that's huge for them because you're right. They have to probably, that's some depth that's got to be sped up in their development a little bit, probably a little sooner than you would like, but that's part of it.
Early thoughts on Lance Dixon? Looks like a pretty athletic guy.
Long, athletic,
Yeah.
can run, is extremely rangy, and weird how we play that wheel linebacker. So he's doing a good job through 2 days.
Jordan, back to the safeties for just a second. KJ Martin, I know he was trying to shake some rust off in the spring. How close is he, and how important is it to get him up to speed before the ball?
It has had a really good summer, and it's had really good 2 days. Again, that spot it's crucial that development with all of those guys. We know the two that have played a lot of ball. Watch that cord.
Good catch.
Two that have played a lot of ball, and what their experience is. But again, looking at a 12-game season, that's it's crucial that and KJ's a part of it.
I know your two new defensive coaches have been here for a while, but do you all learn from each other kind of differently in practices? Do different things come out and say, that when when you're all fitting together, that you think you'll end up using, in a game in terms of communications, things like that?
You mean as far as how we use?
With your assistant coaches, just in, learning how they coach, how they function on the field versus, back here in the offices.
Oh yeah, I mean it's and I think the big thing is for me is you got to let them. A lot of times you have guys that try to manage every single thing, and I'm really not like that. I let them go, let them do their job. We sit in the meeting room and have a plan every day, every time we go out there, and so yeah, I mean just let them coach.
Back to the secondary, and Neil mentioned this yesterday. I'm curious what you think. He thought the backup defensive backs would be important into how successful the defense is. Developing those guys, he thought the first guys. What's your thoughts back there with the backups?
Oh yeah, that's
Could be the key to the defense, maybe.
probably, I would say. I mean, it's going to be one of them,
Yeah.
and I think going into the first question overall, quality depth across the board. It's just a lot of our younger guys, they don't have, let's say the second year guys, they haven't had a normal college football fall.
Yeah.
you know, and they had played 10 games, had a different fall camp than what you normally have in 20, and so they haven't seen the exact what a 12, 13, whatever it is, just a longer season. And so, and I just say that to say that yes, that across the board, you know, I think the biggest thing going into spring, summer, and fall is developing quality depth. That's what we've talked about.
You know, for all the unfortunate things that happened last year with the COVID year, you were fortunate in that you were pretty healthy in that back end.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you can't always count on that. You need that depth, I guess.
Right. Yeah, and you know, it was just so different.
Right.
You know, you had I can't remember exactly how it was structured, but I think it was an off week you had one more off week than you normally had. You knew you were going to play less games. You know, we didn't get to play the Oklahoma game, so there's one. So 10 total would have been 11, but you still had a little more time.
Yeah.
So that probably helped. And so, you know, it's.
I guess the net of it is you're going to need more.
Oh yeah, exactly.